Hi, when this series first aired, you saw Chad making the legs. Well, I filmed the whole of my build and I thought perhaps you'd like to see how I made my legs. Hi, today we're going to be making the legs. So, let's make a start. So from the plans, I've taken the shape of the leg, created it full size as a positive, and I cut that out carefully, so I've also got the full size as a negative. Now I'm going to take the wood that I'm going to make the legs from, which is the light red Moranti, and this is for the back legs, so I'm hoping to get 2 legs out of this one piece. So I can lay my one on there, and I believe I can get another one like that. So we'll get the 2 legs out of there. To actually do the mortises in there, it's going to be a lot easier if we don't cut out the shape of the leg, because at the moment, if we need to put a mortise into this face here, we've got a leg which is slightly curved and tapered. It's going to be very difficult to hold that on the bench and chop that mortise, or use a mortiser, or for that matter, any other method of making the mortise. It's much easier to do it when it's in the square. So what I'm going to do is lay out my legs on the piece of wood, one there, one here, lay out where my mortises go. So it will be on the side here, and then before I cut out the shape, I can make that mortise, make the mortise in here as well, then cut out the legs and take it from there. Now to mark out on this Moranti, it's a little bit tricky to see pencil, so I've got a white pencil here, that just helps a little bit. So we'll just define the ends and a few points along the way. Now I'll take a ruler and a gauge, and I'll lay in for the mortises. I'll take all those measurements off the plans, lay that mortise in, and then we can chop that. For the front legs, we've got a slightly thicker blank. That's because we're flaring on 2 sides. And to get this flare at the bottom of the legs in both directions, we're actually still a little bit too slim. I couldn't get anything that was quite thick enough. So what I'm going to be doing eventually is just gluing on a little piece on the end there, which will take the end of the flare. But we won't do that yet because having the flare on the leg makes it really difficult to cut the mortises. So we'll do all the mortising before we shape the leg. So if I take my positive, work out which way round I want to have that on the leg, now I can mark that in and mark in for the mortises and also the little dado that we've got for the shelf. Now because this craft paper template is a little bit delicate and we're going to be using it quite a lot during the project, I'm going to transfer this onto a piece of plywood and then we'll have something a bit more resilient. So I've just finished making up my more permanent template, and it's going to be a lot easier using that to draw around when I'm making my legs. And I've copied onto that the locations for all the joinery, and although the back legs are slightly different, I'm able to put the information for that on this one template, so that'll do for both of them. Now taking the 2 front legs, this is the top of the legs. These 2 together is where they're going to be facing each other when the table's built. These are going to be the outsides, this is going to be the front edges of the legs. If we pop those together and start what is a carpenter's triangle on there, then we'll remember what orientation they're in. And because the back leg is currently all in one piece, I can't quite do that, complete that triangle yet. So now I can lay out the legs. And then I can transfer the joinery onto the component. So I've got a layout for my dado here on the legs, and I've got my mortises marked on here for the side rails, and I can flip the pieces over and do the layout on the front side. So the dados are being carried round for the shelf rails, and then I'm just pricking the positions of the dowel holes for the front rail. Now with all the leg joinery marked out, I can begin cutting it. Now I enjoy chopping my mortises with a mortise chisel and a mallet, but it can take quite a while, and there are plenty of other methods. You could use a mortising machine, you could use a router, you could pre-bore holes in the mortise location, then clean up with a chisel. Lots of different ways. Just find whatever's good for you and follow that. If you're chopping by hand, why not make yourself a little depth gauge just to make sure all your mortises are nice and consistent. The legs also require a groove lower down to hold the side rails, and I'll prepare those with hand tools as well. Of course, if you prefer to use a different method, then go right ahead. To bore the dowel holes for the front rail, use a doweling jig, like this shop-made one, or a drill press. And if you're using a drill press, make sure to check it for plumb in both directions. And use a fence to make sure all the holes line up perfectly. It's essential that these dowel holes are plumb to the surface for the front rail to go on square and to get tight joints. Now to cut out the two back legs and to put the profile on one of the axes of the front legs. If you don't have a bandsaw, you could quite easily do this with a jigsaw, or you could do it by hand with a coping saw or a frame saw. Because the material for my front legs wasn't quite thick enough, I'm gluing on a couple of extra blocks here to take account of the flare at the bottom of the leg before I cut the profile in the second axis. I'm using hide glue because I believe this will be less obvious in the finished product than PVA. A full set of plans to go along with this build are available from my Etsy store or from my website. These plans include component drawings, options, a materials list, and over a dozen tips that will help your build go smoothly. Next time I'll show you how I made the rails for my nightstand.